To end the discrimination against minority groups, it is not enough for us to just walk down the streets and do campaign and tell people that these minority groups have rights, because we have seen a lot of like that in the status quo, and we see the result is never been effective. We have seen their silence given by the people and the more unfriendly policies created by the government. In the political movement itself, we have seen big parties that previously promised in their campaign to protect minority rights are currently not fully representing the rights of the minority. But we think that this situation is progressive enough and will give better situations for these minority groups comparatively to the government side of the house. Government argues that the minority groups should be given chance to unite and form their own singular political party, which for us it is not strategic enough and will only worsen the situations. In these argumentations, I'm going to talk two different layers of arguments. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the representations of minority groups in politics, and secondly, I'm going to talk about how it will only worsen the situations. First of all, let's talk about the representations of the minority groups in the politics. We have seen on how it is very hard for the minority groups to run themselves as a candidate in the elections, and their issues, which is about minority rights, are very less likely to be openly discussed in the parliament, and the unfriendly policies that always be produced by these policymakers, which will only add the oppression related to these minority groups. By the lack of representation in politics, we don't think it is strategic for us to solve this problem by just campaigning on the street, because it will not change any of the unfriendly policies. What is strategic for us is that we need to connect these minority groups with the government, with those policymakers. How is that so? Is we need this political party. The big political party currently in the nations are the only stakeholder that can be the umbrella that can give the protections towards this minority, because they are the only possible stakeholder that can be influenced, that can influence the decision making in the parliament. Why is that so? Different from the activist groups, organizations that defend about the minority rights, that are since the very first place are not involved in the politics, but these political parties are since the very first place are involved into politics, and they are having the chance to go to the parliament. Therefore, they are the only possible stakeholder that can help these minority groups inside of the politics and can influence the decision making in the parliament. Therefore, as this opposition team, we want to maximize the representations of these minority groups inside of these big parties. The characteristics of these big political parties, we think that very possible to make the better situations for these minority groups. First of all, these big political parties have a lot of money to begin with. Secondly, they have so much power in the politics, and thirdly, they already have a lot of voters. For example, because the previous elections they have won, so people are tend to choose for these big political parties. Therefore, they have almost 99% chance to get into the parliament, right? And understanding they also attract voters from all layers of the society, because they try to gain as many voters, as many people as possible, right? Which means they will also put the minority issues agenda upon their campaign agenda in order for them to reach the votes from these minority groups. They therefore, because they involve minority issues in their campaign agenda, and when they won the elections and go to the parliament, here is the chance for these minority issues to be brought and to be openly discussed inside of the parliament. But comparatively to the case of the government team, when they try to unite and form their own political party, we think that they need to start everything from the grassroots, which means that this political party needs to start everything from zero because they are new from the politics, and we see that on how they don't have power yet in the politics. And their voters for these minority political parties will only most likely come from the minority groups themselves and few people that are actually aware and put the sympathy towards them. And therefore, this movement will only be stagnant time by time, because the voters are only coming from that groups. Why is that so? Because this political party will most likely only engage to the issues about the minority rights. They are not going to engage about another national issue, for example, the economy, the environment of a nation, and so on and so forth. Therefore, it will only attract some voters. It's not only going to be attractive, or it's only going to attract some voters, right? Therefore, they are only going to get a very few voters from this political party. What is the result from this? The result is that they cannot pass the threshold or the minimum voters to have the seat in the parliament. Their movement will fail and will be stagnant, and this will only lead to zero representations of them in the politics. In our side of the house, at least they are actually having a chance for their issues to be brought to the inside of the parliament. Secondly, I'm going to talk about how it will worsen the minority group situations. Each minority, we understand that, have different needs, although they have the same vision, which is to end the discrimination and oppression against them and their family. For example, Muslims need the left on ban for hijab. They need government to build a mosque, while African Americans don't need government to build a mosque. The African American basically only needs access to buy property in certain places, for example, or an easier access to education. Therefore, although they actually have the same vision to end the discrimination against their community, they actually have a very different needs, far more than just to end the discrimination. From this, it's only going to lead to internal conflict when they are formed into one singular political party, because such as, for example, who's going to lead the political party, from which minority group is going to lead the political party, and which minority rights is going to be prioritized first upon this political agenda, for example. Therefore, it's only going to lead to another political conflict, right? And when this internal conflict happen, the people will only see this political party as an unstable political party which is not capable on representing some groups inside of the politics. Therefore, it will also get fewer voters than before, right? So this movement will basically only worsen the situations of these minority groups. So as the opposition team, we think that it is better for these minority groups to just stay on the big parties and supervise what these big parties are going to do upon their rights, and therefore they are going to get best represented in the politics. Thank you.